We are Steel Magnolias, two sisters who love family, traditions, and all things Southern. We've got plenty of room at our table, so pull up a chair. Well, I'll tell you what, I am glad there is room at the table for me today.
Yes.
Because we have quite a treat in front of us. We've got pie and bourbon.
That's right.
So,
two Southern items.
I'm just finishing off my slice of buttermilk pie.
So good.
So we are kicking off an episode. It's going to be great fun. But yeah, I made a buttermilk pie based on a recipe you gave me,
yes.
which we'll put in the
It's
show
good.
notes.
Southern living.
You know what's interesting though is I didn't realize it was going to have this much lemon flavor, but you told me that's
Lemon zest is
classic buttermilk pie.
Lemon zest is, I think, always in buttermilk pie.
Yeah, so this called for zest and fresh squeezed lemon juice. Yeah. Now, do you think I was thinking of a chess pie, maybe?
Maybe. And it's similar. It has that custardy.
Yeah.
I'm going to call it custardy.
It definitely
texture.
Looks similar. Oh, it's so good.
It's so good.
I wish we could,
no nuts, no anything that's given it, a lot of texture.
Yeah.
But I just love that custardy.
It is. It's
consistency.
It's tart. And actually, the recipe recommended putting some type of seasonal berries on top.
With a little whipped cream.
Yes.
Woo!
I think there was even
Lord.
a homemade whipped cream recipe that you could make. But I kept it simple. So this is good. I would definitely make this. Was easy too.
Yeah.
But what I loved about this was I need to know more things to make with buttermilk.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Because I have recipes that call for a fourth of a cup of buttermilk.
So you've purchased this half gallon at least.
Mm-hmm.
We don't like to drink it. You know, our mom loves to drink it with cornbread crumbled up.
We talked about that one time on here.
That's
a thing.
That's a thing. And if you ever have extra, just bring it to her. But I know what you're saying.
I could have done that. But this recipe called for, I think, a full cup.
Yeah.
Of buttermilk, which hence the name buttermilk pie. So I was able to really feel like I got my use
of it.
My
That's
half
fun.
gallon. So it's delicious. I would recommend everybody trying this because it's so easy.
Well, I like to have things that you don't have to have, 15 new ingredients to purchase. It's mostly stuff you have, except I don't always have buttermilk. But
yeah.
Maybe you just decide you're going to fry chicken and make that pie in the same week, and there you go.
Yeah. Well, this was a win, I think. I don't know if my husband liked it because he's more of a chocolate fan,
person.
So,
yeah. Have you ever made a chocolate chess pie?
No.
Okay. He would probably like that. Kind of like Mom's fudge pie that she makes.
Chess would have
a lot of butter and a lot of sugar.
Exactly. And so the chocolate, that would give it a different flavor.
Yeah. And at some point, in May, I'll always make a Derby pie for the Derby. So I'll make one of those in May, and we'll talk about Derby pie and all things Derby because the Derby's so fun.
That's going to be a fun episode.
But lots of Southern pies will have even a little bourbon in there. Mm. And so that's kind of fun because...
We've got the... what's this ice cube called?
So transition to bourbon, because that's one of the things we want to talk about today is bourbon. I'm pouring as we speak. And so we're going to just taste as we're talking to you all, talking bourbon a little bit. And I was going to get to ice a little bit down the road, but I'll talk about it now.
You can do it whenever.
Because ice matters when you're...
It sure does.
There's various ice, and there's even preferences. People like different things.
Yeah.
But the ice cube in our glasses today are very large, round balls. I ordered these online. And...
taking a photo for our Instagram.
Oh, yes. Follow us on Instagram. So this is a really nice ice cube to chill your bourbon, give you a little... It'll chill it, but not dilute it. Because you don't want, if you're doing sipping whiskey, you don't want a bunch of water diluting it down.
That's true.
So I don't want to get ahead of myself. Okay. But that's what we have here today. It's
just so pretty in the glass.
It is pretty, isn't it?
Follow us on Instagram to see
that.
Exactly what we're drinking, which it looks the same. I guess all bourbons kind of look the same, but they're definitely...
good. observation.
Okay.
I wasn't even going to go into that today, but they kind of do and they kind of don't.
Okay.
The more you learn about bourbon, a true connoisseur would be able to maybe even say, that's probably from Kentucky. That might be from, where I'm so not there.
Yeah. Yeah, so the purpose of today...
We're going 101.
I'm going to play dumb because I am dumb in this regard. I'm not a dumb person, but I am far less educated in bourbon and whiskey as other things in my life. So I'm going to kind of...
You're the expert on many things.
Be inquisitive and ask questions. And we just want to start a conversation that you could have some base level of knowledge if you were at a social event and this came up. This is your 101.
Basics.
Like, this is you not fearing the conversation if bourbon comes up.
That's right. And we've even had a listener that mentioned, gosh, I work with a lot of bourbon drinkers and I can't even contribute to the conversation. I know nothing. Will y'all talk about that sometime? And I'm like, yes, we will. So here we go.
For you.
So I am going to just kind of give a little background and some trivia and all kinds of stuff. But really some of the basic words that you hear in regards to this particular libation is the word I'm going to use.
Libation, that's good.
You hear bourbon, you hear whiskey, you hear rye, you hear scotch.
Yes.
What are these differences?
And sometimes combined, bourbon whiskey. I've seen that before, too.
So we're going to talk about some differences. So basically, what is whiskey is where I was just going to start.
Okay.
It's a distilled alcoholic beverage made from fermented grain mash.
Grain mash.
The mash is typically aged in wood cask.
Okay.
Which gives it the distinct brown color and taste.
Oh, makes sense.
So,
wood is brown.
And so it's gonna, and depending on different things, which we're going to get into a little bit, is going to change the color. How long is it in there? What kind of barrel was it? Et cetera, et cetera. Okay. What?
That's whiskey.
Yes. Anything else I wanted to say about that? There's different subsets of that. We'll get into all of that. But one of the things I wanted to mention at being a Nashville native is the best-selling whiskey in the world is Jack Daniel's, which is less than an hour from where we live.
Yeah. So not in the U.S., in
the world.
Yeah.
Which you have a funny story about your study abroad.
When I studied abroad in Spain, I mean, obviously a major language barrier, so I had to speak Spanish. There was very little English spoken when I was there.
When people said, where are you from?
I said, the United States. They said, oh, New York? No. In the South, in the state of Tennessee. And they just kind of looked at me with a blank stare. And so I would say, Elvis Presley, kind of saying, like, do you know that name? Sometimes people did.
Yeah.
But my next go-to person was Jack Daniels.
Oh, Jack Daniels.
Yeah,
okay,
immediately.
I know that one.
Now we have a heart connect.
That's hilarious.
And it was behind the bar of every restaurant we went to.
And because Jack Daniels actually says Tennessee whiskey on it,
then they knew.
I've had people, when I said I was from Tennessee and I was in another country, they'll go, oh, Jack Daniels. Like, that's the only other place they knew that Tennessee word.
And because they get to call it Tennessee whiskey because they do their aging not their aging, but the charcoal process.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll get to that when we get to Tennessee whiskey.
See, I just know enough to be dangerous.
You know enough. Okay. So then what makes a whiskey a bourbon? Okay. For a whiskey to be considered a bourbon, because bourbon is whiskey.
Exactly.
Okay.
Bourbon is whiskey. Okay.
For a whiskey to be considered a bourbon, the mixture of the grains from which the product is distilled, or that mash, has to be 51% corn, rye, wheat, malted barley, or malted rye.
Okay.
It has to be some 51%.
Yeah.
Okay. On top of that, the mixture must be stored in charred oak containers and cannot contain any additives.
Okay.
So that's fun to me when you're looking at color, is to know that is not any coloring.
Yeah.
And I think it's a beautiful color.
It is pretty.
Anyhow, that pretty much separates bourbon from everything else.
Okay.
And I just thought this was interesting. The name Bourbon comes from an area known as Old Bourbon around what is now Bourbon County, Kentucky. So that's where the name came from.
Okay. Oh, the actual county is called Bourbon?
Bourbon County.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Bourbon, I looked this up and thought it was interesting. Bourbon is an $8.5 billion dollar industry that accounts for as many as 17,500 jobs.
Wow.
And creates $825 million in tax revenue every year, according to statistics from the Distillers Association. And Kentucky makes 95% of the world's bourbon supply.
That's crazy. 95%.
And I will tell you that
the world's bourbon is coming from the state
Kentucky,
just north of us.
And I believe most of it is from within,
like, a small
I want to
radius.
say like 2 counties. I mean, it's that might not be right, but it's just a small. It's not even the fullness of the state. So
that's crazy. Worldwide.
Big business.
Industry. And those distillers are proud of it,
You
aren't
bet.
they?
You bet. Now, Tennessee whiskey is just bourbon with a different name. So, first and foremost, the biggest difference is location.
Okay.
What separates the two is a method of filtering.
That's what I was thinking.
Yes. So, it's... And we've toured Jack Daniels. It's pretty cool to see their whole process.
Awesome.
Everything is done on site.
Yes.
I was amazed they even did their own charcoal. They do all of it right there.
Outsourcing is not a word that you will ever hear on that campus.
That's right. So, yeah, usually it's sugar maple that they're using for for that process. So, anyway, that's before it goes into the cask. It's been through this charcoal process.
Yeah.
Obviously, Jack Daniels is the most famous Tennessee whiskey, but there's lots of other Tennessee distillers. In fact, George Dickel's not far
at all. I've never
from
been
that.
over there. Is George Dickel considered Tennessee whiskey? Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, that's kind of a little bit about that. And then Scotch is technically whiskey, but it's been distilled and matured in Scotland.
All Scotch is Scotland.
Right.
That's easy to remember, too.
That's right. It's mostly made from malted barley.
Okay.
And remember that bourbon is mostly corn. I don't know if I said that, but most of that is going to be
I don't think you did say that.
Corn.
Bourbon's mostly corn. Okay.
So, yeah, that I think is the most of the basics. Now, if you're traveling, one thing I thought was interesting is if you're in England and you ask for whiskey, you get Scotch.
What?
Well, keep in mind, some of this is, right.
That's so interesting.
And then if you're in Ireland, you're going to get Irish whiskey.
Okay.
So,
which I have no idea what that's going to taste like.
Oh, we sometime might have to, maybe in March when I'm going to go to Ireland.
Yes.
We can do some Irish whiskey.
Okay.
Anyhow, one other thing I don't have here as something I wanted to mention, but I do think it's important. Lots of Scottish and Irish immigrants came to America, and when they settled, many of them settled in the Appalachia kind of areas.
True.
For many reasons, but also keep in mind if they've been doing Scotch and whiskey.
That's what they know.
That's what they know. Let's find a place where we can do that. The best place to do that here is going to be Kentucky, Tennessee.
Okay.
Wouldn't that make sense?
Yeah.
That would be a natural fit.
Yeah.
I'm going to get into in a little minute some of the reasons why this region is so good for that.
Okay.
And then one other I wanted to mention was rye, because sometimes you'll hear people say rye whiskey. And so rye whiskey, as the name suggests, is a whiskey that's distilled with at least 51% rye.
Okay.
Rye is a type of grass that's a member of the wheat tribe and kind of close to barley.
Uh-huh.
I don't like rye very much. I keep trying a few different ones just to see.
Yeah.
But everybody's tastes are different. You know, if you know nothing about bourbon, but yet you know some things about wine, just keep in mind that there's a similar culture in the sense of maybe you love Cabernet. Mm-hmm. And that's your thing. Well, that's how people are in the bourbon world. Like, they love their whatever.
Yeah.
And they don't like all this other.
Yeah.
You know, there's just different palates, different taste.
So I wonder if, like, when you're in conversation, if, like, because I know, you know, if I talk to somebody, because I like wines, and they're like, oh, I love Zinfandel.
Like, me too. Now we've got a heart connect.
Yeah.
So wonder if it's the same.
Absolutely it is.
Bourbon-wise.
Where you feel like you have a similar palate and that kind of thing. And there are some great Zinfandels out there, isn't there? Anyway, I digress. Okay, just a few things. Now, I went to college in Kentucky, so I have lots of Kentucky friends and connections. And so I've done the Bourbon Trail, which I was going to talk about here in a little bit. I've done it almost 2 times, not fully 2 times. Okay. So I've hit a lot of these distilleries and tasted and things like that. And it is a fun culture. Yeah. But over my various tours, some of what I'm sharing is things I've learned along the path. Okay. And one reason Tennessee and Kentucky are so good for making these whiskeys and bourbons is we have a lot of limestone. We're built on a lot of limestone. So limestone, well, the stone that's in your area gets in your water.
Yes.
And limestone takes out some of that bitterness.
Okay.
Which is a really important factor in distilling.
Okay.
So, naturally, with all of that limestone, it's going to make our whiskey taste good.
Interesting.
Very cool to me. Also, limestone makes for strong horses. So that's another reason you see, this horse culture in Kentucky. Yes. That's so good.
So many that
Same
are
for Ireland. And
being bred there. Yeah.
They have that similar horse culture and whiskey culture and that kind of thing. So it's just interesting that would play into it. And also, we have varied seasons.
Right.
Both hot and cold.
Yeah.
Obviously, if something's sitting in an oak barrel, for it to go in and out of that barrel, the heat and the cold make things swell and go down. You want it to go in and out of that barrel to get this pretty color and flavor.
Interesting.
And so that's another reason, because we have that the seasons. It's not just a same all the time climate. You've got more.
Right. Because these are being stored in massive
huge buildings, many barrels. In fact, you'll get a kick out of this. There's actually more bourbon barrels in Kentucky than people.
That's so funny. In Kentucky.
In Kentucky, there's more bourbon barrels at any given time than residents.
Okay, that's cool. These are great little facts and nuggets to know.
I know. So anyhow, now one other piece I wanted to mention, because I remember thinking, you hear, just like with wine, just like with really anything in life, such a varied scope of prices.
I know. I used to think all wine was very expensive. Just, I don't know. It just kind of it is still a luxury add-on,
Especially some of the ones we like. But anyway.
Yeah. But no, there's definitely cheap wine out there.
Absolutely. And so same for this world. And one thing that's fascinating when you do these tours, different distilleries will have, there's different sections of I don't want to get too deep into this, but there's different sections where these barrels are stored.
Okay.
And some of them just sit for a few years. Some of them sit for decades.
Wow.
So if your barrel is filled with liquid and it's sitting for these periods of time, you're having evaporation happen.
True.
Over time. The longer it's in there, the more evaporation. So they have to take into consideration how much they have to charge for this liquid inside,
it's
based on how much is in there.
Yeah. Which is probably killing them, knowing, oh my gosh, we're down to this much.
We're losing this to evaporation.
Yeah.
But which they call the angel share, by the way. I think that's so funny.
I've heard that term.
Angel share is what the angels get.
Yeah.
The evaporation process.
That's kind of their offering to the angels. Yes. Okay, I get it now.
So anyhow, that's something to take into consideration when we start talking about different price points. If you're talking about a bourbon that's been sitting in a barrel for 23 years and it costs $250, which is going to be like in the Pappy Van Winkle family of bourbon prices, that is because they've babied this thing for 23 years and we only have this amount.
Yeah.
We only get a limited number of bottles.
Yeah,
so
makes sense.
The evaporation process.
But don't be afraid. There are many, many bottles that are nowhere near that expensive.
Oh, goodness, yes. That's the cream of the crop, and I've never had any Pappy Van Winkle. That's right. But I did want to mention, like, bourbon to me, just like with wine or really honestly with anything, is better when you share it with friends. It's not just for collecting and hoarding and putting away. And that plays into hospitality, which is such our heart. Our heart is hospitality. So if you have Pappy Van Winkle and you're hoarding it, please invite me over. I've never had it.
As our intro said, there's plenty of room at the table.
That's right.
Pull up a chair. So they call it Pappy, right? Or
yes.
Is Pappy a short?
Some people just say, "Oh my goodness, they had a so and so got a bottle of Pappy." Okay, it's like a really big deal. Okay, if you get one. A good friend of mine from college, digressing, but it was really funny, broke a bottle of Pappy in his driveway and put this picture up on social media. And, like, you could see the broken bottle, and all the comments were like, "No, dude." Yeah. Really funny.
Oh, that's horrible.
Anyway, I know. Anyhow, so let's taste some bourbons.
Let's do. What do we got here first? So, this is a brand I've seen before.
So we're starting off with a Four Roses bourbon.
Okay.
This is not, they make a single barrel that's really, really nice. This is just their plain, straight up.
Okay. So this is not single barrel. I don't know what that means.
Single barrel means that it came from a single barrel. So sometimes distillers will...
And that's better. Kind of.
See, all things are... It could be if it was a really good barrel. But it just means that it's from this barrel. In fact, it'll often tell you barrel, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
And some people even... Gosh, I'm getting into more than I was going to. Will reserve a barrel. Like, I want barrel... whatever. And so they actually get that barrel and hope that it's going to be a good one, and we get it all because we've prepaid or, however that works. So anyhow, that happens in the world of whiskeys and bourbons. But this one is one I personally would use more for making cocktails. Mm-hmm. If you're going to make cocktails,
that's good.
It's doesn't need to be quite the high-end sipping whiskey as... if you're going to mix it with a bunch of stuff, it doesn't really matter as much.
Yeah. I like that. I think it's that.
I think it's pretty good.
Surprised how much I like that. Cheers. Yes, this is tasty. Mm-hmm. Now, it is chilled because we've been sitting here in it with it the whole time we've been talking, 20 minutes or so. So I think I like that too.
I like it chilled like that. Also... Just, again, this would be, for me, the same thing I would do with wine. It's nice to smell it first with your mouth, with your mouth a little open.
Like a cat smells.
They may be onto something. It really, you get more of the expression of what's happening. Mm-hmm. And then also, you can swish it around in your mouth a little bit, just like you would a wine.
Okay.
One of my friends, Jim, says that's the Kentucky Chew.
Oh my gosh.
Just to kind of swish it around. And then a couple of other things I wanted to say. You can put just a little bit of water in bourbon, and it makes it, they use the terminology bloom. Oh. So just a little bit of water will make it kind of, more of the notes will come out.
Now, I'm sure we're
not talking very much water. I'm talking...
literally a splash.
Just a little. And this ice cube sat in here for a little bit and has, you see it's melted a little? So I think that's sufficient for what I'm talking about.
Wonder what kind of water people prefer. Because water's all over the map. So.
Yes, and that matters, having good filtered water. Yeah. When you're making ice cubes is a good thing to do.
That's true.
So, and then I also wanted to say, don't ever let that first sip... don't stop there. Yeah. Go ahead and give it another. Yeah. Because that's really just awakening all your senses. Yeah. And you want it to, give it another. And almost always that second sip is better.
Mm-hmm. I like this a lot. So this would be, we're starting with this and we're going to go up in price points,
a little. Yeah.
But this is definitely a nice enough bourbon that you could take as a host gift.
Absolutely. And I would say you could get this bottle. Now this is a really large bottle, but you could get the normal smaller size bottle for 20-ish, maybe 23-ish, something like that.
That's a great host gift or a birthday gift or, Christmas coworker gift. Right. I don't know. Whatever.
That's right. And again, there's going to be price points all over the map. We just have 3
that we're doing
that we're going to show today or taste today. So that's that one.
That was good. But you said you like making cocktails with that one. I
do. I mean, I think it's a good one. I'm not going to buy something that I'm embarrassed. I'm not going to get something terrible. But I've gotten just a basic Evan Williams for cocktails. This 4 Roses I like.
Okay.
Something like that.
You would typically make an old fashioned with that?
That's one of my favorite cocktails is the old fashioned.
Which is just some bitters,
little
sugar,
muddled up cherry and then it has cherry and orange.
Yeah, like an orange twist is usually how it's served in restaurants. Yeah.
So but still you definitely, it is a bourbon based strong, this is not lightweight cocktail. It's still very bourbony.
Yeah. That was good.
I like that one a lot. Okay.
Let's talk, can we talk other cocktails real quick while I by time sipping my last sips, or did you have other?
Well, I wanted to mention ice.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead and talk about the ice.
The ice cube we're using on this sipping is a large ice cube that's not going to melt too fast because we don't want too much water.
Yeah.
But for drinks like a mint julep, which is bourbon with some sugar and mint leaf kind of muddled in there too. But it's a strong drink. I remember the first time I heard of mint julep, I had in my head, I was thinking of something like creme de menthe or like, that is not, it is bourbon with a mint leaf. It's not.
Usually with pellet ice, right?
And it often will have that pellet ice.
That like Sonic ice.
Yes, exactly. Which is really great for some cocktails. Yeah. I've actually purchased that from Sonic. You can buy it by the bag.
Buy their ice.
And it's really great for a lot of cocktails.
Yeah.
But that's going to make it, you're going to have more water getting in it because it's melting.
Because it's melting. Pellet ice does melt fast.
Yeah. So you wouldn't want to do that if you were drinking a nice sipping bourbon because by the time you get halfway down, it's
very watered. Yeah.
So anyway, your ice matters and, but it's even a preference thing. If you don't like, some people drink it no ice, just straight up.
Is that what they call neat?
Yes.
Okay. Neat is no ice.
Right.
Okay. Trying to find like word associations to remember all of this because you're giving us all these fun facts.
So that was that. And then one other cocktail, because you said mention cocktails, that my friends know me for is in May. I usually make my first batch for the Kentucky Derby, which is the first Saturday of May. Actually, that came from Laura Mason Holman, my good friend Laura. She introduced me to this bourbon slush that has become legendary in my life.
Friends, husbands of friends request this. Mm-hmm. It is... we'll definitely have to put a recipe up.
That's a summer drink to me.
For that,
because the consistency is a slush. So it is bourbon mixed with unsweet tea. Well, I do unsweet tea because it also has lemonade, orange juice, pineapple juice. Mm-hmm. You're mixing all that, freezing it. You scoop it out, which is making it this slushy consistency, and then you top it with Sprite.
Yeah.
So I love that in the summer on a hot day.
It is the ultimate
to sit outside
Southern cocktail in the summer.
It is wonderful.
Okay, we'll wait till summer to put that recipe up, unless you just are dying to have it. Then you can message us.
Yes. So that's a few cocktails. I think we should. Are you ready to start another pour while I continue talking? Okay. So our next thing we're going to try is a bump up a little bit in price, but still not significantly. I want to say this one's in the $30-$35 range.
Okay.
This is Maker's Mark 46.
Okay.
And
so not just Maker's Mark.
This is 46. And I remember asking them where the 46 come from. Mm-hmm. And it was, they have, the master distiller tries lots of different things. And in this one, they had put in the oak barrel a wood piece that had some vanilla in it. And so that sat in the barrel the whole time.
Yeah.
And so it has a different taste than just a plain Maker's Mark.
Okay.
So I just thought that would be a fun one to try and see what your thoughts are on this.
So give me just a little. Now, the fun look of, that's good, of Maker's is, of course, the red wax sealed bottle. Yes. Which I have heard if you go tour the distillery, you can dip your own bottle. That's very fun.
That is fun. And I remember on that tour them saying it also has a wax seal and then the wax on the top. Yeah. And my sister will know this about me. I've always loved wax seals. I use them sometimes in letters that I write.
The stationery
things like that. Mm-hmm. So I just thought it was sweet that on the tour they were mentioning that was the distiller owner's wife came up with that.
Oh, she got to put her mark on it.
That was something that she wanted them to do. And I thought that was so fun to think of just the beauty of male and female giftings and how when a couple is listening to each other, how sweet that can be. Yeah. You know, he probably had these great ideas of what to do to the actual whiskey, and she's like, let's make it packaged nicely.
Let's make it pretty.
Yeah.
It's going to taste good, but it's also going to be
some
pretty.
People in other countries that don't know the name, they know the red wax. That's remember being in China one time and somebody saying something about, like, what's the red wax?
Okay.
Oh, that's Maker's Mark. Yeah. You know, so.
That's interesting.
It's the Maker's Mark.
It is.
So,
anyway, I like it.
What are your thoughts?
So, this is good. It's so much spicier than the Four Roses. Mm-hmm. But I like it. It definitely can stand on its own as a sipping.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want bitters
to add it. Oh no,
things added to this
because it has such a nice. But isn't it fun to say, "Oh my goodness, there's a difference."
Such a difference, and now I even see looking at the bottles the color difference. Yeah, for sure. So that's Maker's Mark 46.
That was just another one, just to
pretty
have as a taste. I wanted to mention just a few. We've already mentioned Jack Daniel's and George Dickel. Another good bourbon here in Nashville, the Belmead bourbon.
Really?
Has some varieties. And then last weekend, you and I went to Corsair.
Yep.
Which is a local.
Mm-hmm. It's in Nashville.
Yeah. So we tried a couple of different things. We both liked that triple smoke.
Yes, that was good.
Definitely a smoky flavor, which I often like in food and beverage. I like a smoke. Yeah. And then I tried the rye, still trying to find a rye, and I didn't like it at all. So that doesn't mean Corsair doesn't have a good rye. I just apparently don't like rye.
Yeah.
So you may love the Corsair rye. That's just... And then I haven't been yet. Well, actually, I pulled in the parking lot, but it was closed. Leaper's Fork Distillery.
I want to go there.
I would like us to...
That would be fun.
Get over there.
It's way too close for us to have not been over there yet.
And speaking of that, Leaper's Fork area, I always think of the Natchez Trace.
Yes.
And my friend Jim Holman was telling me that the Natchez Trace was the route that those people that ran on the flatboats down to New Orleans that took the whiskey there, that was their route home, was the Natchez Trace. So... I don't know a whole lot about that, but I just think that's interesting that would be...
that was kind of their guider.
So there's probably some interesting history of bourbon and whiskey on that route.
That's awesome.
There is... I wanted to mention the Kentucky Bourbon Trail.
Yeah.
You can go to their website, which is Kentucky, like KY, Bourbon Trail, KY,
I'll put that in our
bourbontrail.com.
Okay.
It has tons of information on doing a road trip, of hitting various distilleries in Kentucky.
So, question, since you've done it a couple of times, did you feel like there was a lot of variety in going from distillery to distillery?
That is a great question. I felt like they all had different personalities.
Okay.
But I definitely would not personally want to do a tour at each.
Okay.
Because the process is similar.
Sure.
So maybe out of, I don't remember how many are on there. I want to say they're up to like 12 or 14 now stops.
Okay.
They've added a couple since I've done it.
Okay.
maybe do 2 tours. I don't think you need to tour all of them to hear everything about everything at each one. But they do each have their own little personality. Kind of like we've been to Napa.
Yeah. Napa
Didn't
Valley.
you think the same? They all have kind of a personality.
A lot of variety and personality.
Worth seeing different ones, but you wouldn't want to necessarily hear about all the vines and hear about all the
you're right, I wouldn't.
process of each.
Right.
Similar.
So on the Bourbon Trail, I remember you mentioning something about a passport they gave you. Where did you get that, and how does that work?
You get it from this website, this Kentucky Bourbon Trail website. They actually send you this brown passport that you can take to each distillery to get a stamp. It's kind of just a fun thing, but when you're with your friends and you're getting your stamps and you feel like you're just accomplishing this thing. But at the end, if you have all of them stamped, you mail it back in and they send you a T-shirt.
So you got a shirt.
I have a T-shirt.
That's right.
But I've only finished it once. I've done about half.
So how many do you have to? How many stamps do you have to?
I think they're up to almost 14 now.
Okay, so you didn't have to go to 14.
I think I had to go to 11 or 12.
Wow. Okay.
They've added a couple more.
Okay.
And we didn't do, I mean, obviously, you wouldn't necessarily do this. I don't think you could do it in one day.
Yeah.
This is a few days.
And this is all Louisville area?
Lexington, Louisville. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and, often in little country windy roads.
Yeah.
Lots of bourbon in Bardstown, where we've been.
Yep. They claim they're the bourbon capital of the world.
That's right. And they are.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's just a fun thing to do. Maybe I've known of girls' trips doing it. Lots of guys' trips, do a portion or all of the Bourbon Trail. So
yeah, isn't it interesting how, like, girls seem to do the wine
generally? Isn't it funny?
Seem to have wine preference, and bourbon and whiskey seem to be male centric, but it's kind of
shifted,
opening up to more women.
And I think you see lots of dudes that like wine too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So there is just a variety of things people like.
Yep.
But anyway, the current stops on the trail I thought I would mention: Heaven Hill, which is Bardstown, Maker's Mark, we've mentioned, and it's really pretty, by the way. I was going to mention, I just think it's
their
such
grounds?
Their grounds are beautiful. Woodford Reserve, also, that was probably my favorite.
Yeah.
It's in the middle of horse farms. They have, this is such a girl comment, great gift shop.
Okay.
I don't even just mean of bourbon items. I mean...
Oh, you brought some bourbon balls back from
Yes,
Woodford.
Bourbon ball. They have just fun stuff.
Yes,
they had
so
lots
good.
of cute derby stuff. And anyway, I loved their gift shop. Jim Beam, which is... also a huge name.
Yeah. I had a hot toddy of Jim Beam last night in preparation for today's podcast.
So cute. It's funny, too. The Beam last name is all through the bourbon culture of Kentucky. Like, you'll hear... You could be at a different distillery. Now, this is so-and-so Beam, who's of the Beam family. It's just a family that's definitely...
They immersed all their generations into this.
And they know their bourbon.
Okay.
It's really interesting. But Town Branch is a smaller one that I did visit.
Okay.
Four Roses, which was our first one we tried. It's got its own kind of cool culture, too, and I liked it. Bullet.
I like Bullet.
Bullet's good.
And Bullet has its own county. I've seen those signs,
It does. That's where my friend Terry's from.
Bullet County, yeah.
Evan Williams, we mentioned. Old Forester.
Okay.
Wild Turkey.
Yep.
And the two that have added that I haven't been to, Lux Row and Angel's Envy, are also now on the passport of the trail. So that's just a few.
That's fun.
Just a few favorites I thought I would mention. Again, there's so many price points, and I've not had any of the super, super high ends.
Yeah.
There's one called Ancient Age that's good. I think you can only get it in Kentucky.
Oh, man. Well, that makes it that much more appealing to go up there.
But it's a good, not too expensive one. Laura said there's one called Ancient Age.
Okay.
It's even better, which I've not had. Anything, the older it is, the usually more flavorful and then brings the price tag up too. We're going to get to one that I love. This last one we're going to taste.
Yeah.
It's called Weller.
You put that
and
on
this
Instagram
is
last
Special
night.
Reserve, and it's fantastic. But there's some great ones in all price points. Jim Beam's Black Label is good.
Okay.
The Old Forester's good. Buffalo Trace is good.
I heard Buffalo Trace.
And this is
good.
under their family.
Okay.
It's kind of their nicer one. But anyway, and then if you ever get lucky enough to get something like a Pappy Van Winkle, again, invite us over.
Sure,
We'd love to come. But they have 10
We'll
year.
record at your place.
That's right. To get some of these specialty bourbons, last thing I want to say is to get some of these specialty ones, you're going to possibly need a connection because again,
really?
there's not a lot made, right?
Oh.
We're down to these, so some of these special ones,
That makes sense.
limited number, some of them. So you got to have some kind of way to get your hands on it.
So how do you do that? Do you have to
possibly cultivating a relationship with the liquor store manager.
Oh,
if you were
okay.
to say, like, man, hey, I'd really like to get my hands on this. Can you help me out?
Keep an eye out. Yep.
Yeah, maybe they can work with you to get that. Some places now have, like, join the club, the bourbon club situation.
There's bourbon clubs. Did not know. I've been in a wine club before, but I did not know there were bourbon clubs.
So the local store that I often frequent here in Franklin has you have to join for $180 a year.
But
to be in the club.
Okay, so that's just your membership.
That's
fee.
your membership.
You haven't had one sip of bourbon at that point.
Nothing. You do get 10% off of everything you purchase in the store, except these specialty things. They're not going to discount that.
Okay.
But you're in the club to get your hands on some of these finer picks.
Okay.
I just don't know how all the ins and outs
some
of that.
people, that would be worth it to them.
But just saying, there is sometimes it's not easy you can hear about something, even that's in your price point. Like, oh, that's, I'd be willing to pay that.
Yeah.
Still might not be able to. You're going to have to figure out who can help
to
you
it. Gotcha.
To it. So,
gotcha.
I think that's all I was going to say about bourbon.
Well,
did I talk your ear off?
This was good. I think I could probably hold a little conversation.
Good.
At this point. I do think I prefer bourbon over whiskey, taste-wise. But as a go-to, if I'm going to be ordering a drink out, I'm probably going to get a cocktail.
Uh-huh.
So for me, I like knowing what brands are going into a cocktail, but I'm probably not going to purchase it for myself to just sip on at home.
Yeah.
I love just a basic ginger bourbon. Like just adding some ginger ale to bourbon.
Sure.
And maybe a squeeze of lemon.
Mm-hmm. Just something pretty basic.
Yeah.
You still get the bourbon taste, but it has a refreshing kind of.
Yeah. I love an old fashioned as well, but I like keeping things super simple. So if I were to make something at home, it would probably be just some ginger ale and bourbon.
Okay.
And a squeeze of lemon, and that would be my ginger
would be
bourbon.
That. Now, of the Jack Daniels, we really liked that honey Jack Daniels. Remember
That's
that?
true.
That was good.
That was delicious.
And
I even
it
bought
makes
the
for
hat.
a great, yes, because it had that cute bee on it. But it also makes for a great hot toddy, too.
Yeah. So if you grew up in the South and had a grandmother that was coming up with home remedies, that's probably what you were.
I think I told
on.
you that our mom said that her grandmother sometimes would give her, she called it rock and rye, which was rye whiskey with rock candy in it. I guess
rock
that was
candy,
just
like
on a stick. That
sold it like Cracker Barrel.
Yes. And I guess that was just to sweeten it a little because she was probably 6 years old and drinking this. But anyway,
sipping on rye. So yeah, that probably coated your throat, opened up any probably sinus infection. So
especially if you put a little honey and lemon in there.
Those are healing ailments anyway. Well, I can't wait to try this next one because
I've built it up and you may not like it because everything's different. But
people were loving it. So what's it called again? Tell us again.
This is the Weller Special Reserve.
Okay. And this is from Kentucky, of course.
From Kentucky. It's a wheated bourbon.
And you said it's part of the Buffalo Trace family.
I think it's under Buffalo Trace. There's different ones. Like when I went to Heaven Hill, I couldn't believe they owned so many. Elijah Craig, like all these different ones were under Heaven Hill. So there's different families that have different lines.
That is wonderful. It is wonderful. It is so smooth.
That's what I was like.
I don't think I usually
really liked it.
I don't think I usually categorize bourbon as smooth. Because I just think it always has some spice to it. So that's nice.
Isn't that something? So there you go.
That was an awesome rundown. What was the mash that you said at the very beginning? Grain mash? Is that what it was called?
Yeah, you remember on the tour where that consistency that smelled, that's mash.
So I just wanted to say, even if you aren't a bourbon drinker or have any interest in going and doing a tasting, if you start driving through some of these areas, you can smell the mash. In just getting out of the car. You can almost,
Do you also remember, and this is fascinating to me, that there is a mold that grows from bourbon and whiskey making that makes the trees black.
Yeah.
And the barn or the storage facilities they're in, it makes it black on the outside. That's sometimes in Prohibition how they knew where it was happening because the trees were
busted by nature. That's so interesting.
So anyhow, so much fascinating stuff in our culture.
Thank you for that rundown. I hope that was helpful for people. It was certainly helpful for me as one that just hasn't really dived deep into that world, but certainly open to it and love learning new things. Well, we wanted to wrap up today's show with a couple of Southern sayings or Southern expressions. And I picked a couple that are actually related to whiskey or bourbon.
Oh, fun!
That's
fun. I just picked randoms.
We'll have this pop up again on future episodes because our list was so long.
Oh my goodness, we have so many that we'll just keep going over them. And if you have some that you've heard that you think are hilarious, or if you've heard and you're like, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
Let us know what those are, and or some that are popular from your grandmother or whatever.
Exactly.
We want to hear all of that.
Yeah. So the first one I'll start with is you could describe a woman as saying she's whiskey in a teacup.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Also the name of Reese Witherspoon's latest book that came out in October, which is a very fun Southern read. But if you're saying that a woman is whiskey in a teacup, it means that she's like plain looking or harmless, maybe even just an innocent type of woman, which is represented by the teacup. But inside, she's strong personality, wild, exciting. So she's got that strong, confident sort of expressions of herself that's similar to a whiskey. So she's whiskey in a teacup.
So cute.
So it would be a compliment.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway.
That is so cute.
That's definitely one that's a Southern expression that I think is fun. I don't know if I've ever described anyone as whiskey in a teacup.
I have never used that
but
one.
I might start. I certainly know some women that are whiskey in a teacup.
Yeah, so find a way to use that, right? Well, my first one I'm going to mention, just because it's one our mom uses a lot, or maybe I should say used with me a lot. I don't know if she had to use it with you as much as she did with me. I was born in the dark, but it wasn't last night.
I had that on my list, too.
I just think that's so funny. Mom's like, I may be a little bit naive, but I'm not that naive.
Yeah, that's exactly what it means, right? Like, you're not going to pull that one over.
You can't pull that off.
On me.
So I just had to use that one.
Okay, this one is, have you ever heard the phrase, oh, be joyful?
Yes, and we have a bar named that
So there's
now,
a bar and restaurant in Franklin on Main Street.
And this comes from an alcohol expression. I have heard this before.
So it's vintage slang from the American Civil War. It just means an intoxicating drink, like a homemade brew.
Okay.
So it's kind of funky to me, like, oh, be joyful. I don't know, it's just weird.
That's funny.
That's where the name of their restaurant came from.
So cute.
And
we need to try to use that, too.
Okay.
Okay, there's one I used yesterday, and so I thought I would
that's appropriate.
I was at the grocery
still
store.
In rotation.
There was this little girl that was just adorable to me, and I said, "You are just pretty as a peach."
Oh, that's a compliment.
And pretty as a peach. I mean, I don't know a full blown definition, but it's just meaning you're just
colorful,
pleasant,
pleasant,
adorable.
Yeah.
So. Anyway.
Oh, and I bet that made her day.
It seemed like it did. So I had fun using that one. And I wasn't trying to use it. I used it. And then I started thinking of Southern sayings for today.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I just used one today. I'll just include that.
Let me just record myself all day long and figure out.
That's right.
What do I need to translate? Okay, here's the last one I'll throw in for today. If someone is pitching a hissy fit, or if you're throwing a hissy fit, you could pitch a hissy fit or throw it. A hissy fit. It just means you're really mad. You're throwing a tantrum.
That's right.
But usually, in my opinion, it's used more on adults.
You would say that baby's having a tantrum.
Kid would throw a tantrum. An adult would throw a hissy fit.
That's right.
It's usually a girl, unfortunately. But
I had that on my list.
So
that's funny. That one you do hear a lot. And my last one was God willing and the creek don't rise. So that just means if somebody says, now, are you coming to my party on Saturday? Well, God willing and the creek don't rise. I'm planning on coming as long as nothing major happens.
Right. And things that are out of my control.
Right.
Like, as long as those things don't happen.
I'm going to be there.
Yes, count me in. That's funny. I had that on my list, too.
So there's a few. We're just getting people started to hear some of these things we say down here in this region.
Well, if you have suggestions of Southern expressions that you've heard or ones that you've heard that you need a translation on, I would invite you especially to join our Facebook group. We have a group page now where we're having more discussion around all things Southern. And I invite you to hit the join button and we'll get you approved and just talking and discussing.
We can interact more
on there. Yeah. That's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. We invite you to share this with your friends. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button, and that lets you know every week when we have a new episode that's live. So,
yeah.
Hope y'all have a good week.
Thanks, guys.